Ooh, I waited a long time to make this one for you, baby. It's been a few years since I made a podcast episode. And during these past few years, I faced nothing but adversity. 3 of my closest friends died. 1 was shot and killed. The second one died in his sleep. And the third one died in a car accident. Then my mother was beaten into a coma. My biggest social media account was permanently banned. And all my podcast episodes were erased from the internet. Deep down inside, I knew there was a message behind all this adversity. But the more you ignore that message, the more you increase the feelings of being lost in life. And when that happens, you become something Napoleon Hill calls a drifter. Now, in order for you to understand what I mean when I say the word drifter, I'm going to need to use Napoleon Hill's book, Outwitting the Devil, as a reference in today's podcast episode. In this book, the devil exposes how he uses fear, rhythm, and failure to keep you stuck in negative consciousness. The devil starts this interview off by saying he's not what we think he is. He starts the interview off by saying this: you should know I control 98% of the people of your world. You should also know that I don't have a physical body. I'm not some big red creature with horns. Nah, I consist of negative energy, and I live in the minds of people who fear me. I also occupy 1/2 of every atom of physical matter and every unit of mental and physical energy. The other half is occupied by my opposition, and the other half is what you earthbound people call God. And this is not my claim. This is a fact. Before this interview is finished, you will understand why my claim is true. Now, as the interview continues, the devil begins to share how he's able to control 98% of the people in our world. He continues by sharing his best methods of mind control and says this: one of my best methods for mind control is fear. And the 6 most effective fears are the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. After I plant the seeds of fear, I established the habit of drifting. The best way I can define the word drift is to say that people who think for themselves never drift. But those who do little to no thinking for themselves are drifters. A drifter is someone who allows themselves to be influenced and controlled by things outside of their own mind. A drifter is someone who accepts whatever life throws at them without putting up a fight. A drifter doesn't know what they really want from life, and they spend all their time getting exactly that. This is how I'm able to control their minds before I gain control of their soul. Now, how many of you can relate to what I just read? How many of you struggle with one of those 6 fears? Remember, the devil said that he controls 98% of the people in our world. That means 98 out of every 100 people are stuck in negative consciousness. But just hold on, because as we continue, you'll see how Napoleon Hill gets the devil to expose the beauty behind temporary defeat, failure, and adversity. One of my favorite psychologists, Carl Jung, has a quote that goes something like this: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In other words, if you don't like where you are in life, look at what you're doing subconsciously. And the best way to start off is by becoming aware of some of your beliefs. It's about falling back and questioning the things that you're hearing, the things that you're watching, the things that you're repeating. Because what you're going to learn in this next part is how the devil loves to use propaganda to keep you stuck in that web of negative consciousness. The devil states that his most effective trick is propaganda. He says, I mix propaganda with the news of the world. I have it taught in public and private schools. I see it finds its way into the eye of man through moving pictures. And I mix all of my propaganda in billboards, newspapers, and radio ads. The devil mentioned that he noticed the power behind moving pictures. That he understands the power that the TV has when it hits the eye of a human being. If you really think about what he just said, you will start to make the connection that the devil is able to influence us by manipulating our 5 senses. That's the things that we hear, smell, taste, and touch. Here's a perfect example of what I mean. I want you to really think about this. How many of you really know what TV actually means? We know that we watch it. We know that's in front of us. It's a screen. We get it. But what does it mean? Like the meaning of the abbreviation of TV? Television, right? TV means television. But now, say it slower. Tele-Vision. Meditate on that. For those that don't know, this book, Outwitting the Devil, was written in 1938. The devil's talking about how he influences us through billboards, newspapers, and the news and things like that. But we're in 2026 now. Imagine the influence the devil uses today. Imagine how powerful propaganda is today with everybody having a phone on them. You see, the devil uses propaganda as an invisible weapon to keep your heart and your mind, your ego and your intuition at war with each other. Like when your heart is telling you to do one thing, but that programmed mind is telling you to do another. It's a perfect system that keeps you stuck in the man-made algorithm. And guess what? It keeps you far away from God's algorithm. And that's a bar. Jesus Christ. We just getting started. Now, once you start falling back on the things you watch and listen to, you got to be aware of how the devil uses Mother Nature to keep you trapped. The devil tells Napoleon Hill about a mysterious law that he uses. That this mysterious law keeps people stuck in that negative cycle of negative consciousness. He calls this law the law of hypnotic rhythm and said this: hypnotic rhythm is the same law that is used to hypnotize people. You can think of it like a person who is trying to learn how to play music. At first, you memorize the notes by connecting them through melody and rhythm. Through repetition, this rhythm becomes fixed in the mind. And as repetition continues, the notes blend and then you have music. Now, think about how many times a musician has to repeat a tune before they master it. Well, the mind works the same way. Rhythm is the last stage of habit. Any thought that is repeated over and over again reaches the stage of rhythm. And once that happens, the habit can't be broken because Mother Nature takes it over and makes it permanent. It's similar to a vortex in the water. An object can float around forever until it gets caught in that spin. Then it's carried round and round and can't escape. Wow. Okay. Now, the devil said that nothing can break hypnotic rhythm after nature takes control of it. But he lied. And you will never know that unless you continue to read the book, because at the end of the book, in chapter 11, the devil confesses this: adversity serves as a blessing in disguise because it breaks the grip of hypnotic rhythm and frees the mind for a fresh start. Adversity forces you to test your mental, physical, and spiritual strengths. Adversity brings you face to face with your weaknesses and gives you the opportunity to bridge them together. Adversity breaks old thought patterns and gives you the opportunity to form new ones. Therefore, adversity helps you break and redirect the force of hypnotic rhythm. Now, if you were to really sit back and think about the times you went face to face with adversity, you'll see how true this really is. Because let's keep it real. The older we get, the harder life and adversity becomes, especially for those who grew up like me, spending their entire life fighting for survival. And when you finally get to a place where you start feeling a little safe and secure, adversity doesn't feel like a gift no more. It feels more like a curse. But that's because most of us fell for the hype. We fell for the hype and propaganda of what success is supposed to feel like, what it's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to be. You dig? And that's when we get caught up in chasing materialistic things. All these man-made things makes us forget about the only thing that we have control over. And that's our mind, our thoughts, our belief system. But let me guess, that ain't good enough, right? That ain't good enough. Why is that? Why do we believe that our mind, our thoughts, our beliefs, our own ability to control our own life ain't good enough? Because that's a part of the program. Getting you to believe that It's you and your own mind and your own thoughts and your own belief system is not profitable. But triggering that internal war between your heart and mind is. And the devil knows that. That's why he had no problem confessing all this info to Napoleon Hill in this interview. The devil tells Napoleon Hill that he knows some people will escape his web of negative consciousness by learning from adversity. But he reminds us why he controls 98% of the people of our world. The devil says the majority of people start drifting the second they meet opposition, failure. And not 1 out of 10,000 would keep trying after failing 2 or 3 times. Because failure breaks a person's morale. It destroys their self-confidence. It conquers their enthusiasm. It weakens their imagination. And it drives away their main purpose in life. So if a person does escape my web of negative consciousness, I'll just wait until they fail. Then I'll pull them right back in the second that they quit. If they only knew the difference between temporary defeat and failure, if they only knew that every form of defeat and every failure brings with it the seed of opportunity, then they would keep fighting and would win. Because success is usually just one short step beyond the point where most people quit fighting. Whew, that is a bar. Jesus Christ. You keep fighting because that's what a non-drifter does. A non-drifter doesn't allow negative things or negative circumstances to happen without trying to figure out the root causes to it. A non-drifter understands that negative energy does exist, but they also understand that positive consciousness, positive energy exists too. You understand? A non-drifter uses the law of hypnotic rhythm to their advantage, but not spinning in that vortex of negative energy. Nah, they're spinning in the opposite direction in positive energy. You could tell the difference between a drifter and a non-drifter just by watching how a non-drifter moves. Watch how they walk. Watch the way they talk. Watch the way they react to things. And you'll quickly notice their aura is always with confidence, enthusiasm, and purpose. But you will also notice that they never get comfortable with being comfortable, because a non-drifter is comfortable with being uncomfortable. They're wise enough to know that there is no good without the bad. You wouldn't know what hot water is until you know what cold water is. Consciousness doesn't exist and won't exist if there isn't any opposites. So if you want to live a good life, you got to learn how to fight through the bad, my friend. Like Jay-Z said, I went through hell. I'm expecting heaven. And guess what? That is another bar. Jesus Christ. Now I'm going to get some more water because we're about to get deep. Because sometimes fighting through negative things and bad things and circumstances in life, that fight is tough, bro. It's tough. Even when you're used to fighting. Because there's nothing more challenging than figuring out the root causes to your problems was really you the whole time. And then one day it finally hits you. All of your growth hits a plateau. And deep down inside, you realize that you can't outrun those weaknesses and fears anymore. Your intuition is trying to get you to take that first step, but the ego is too scared to let go. Now that's a real life example of what hypnotic rhythm looks like. Then I kept on making connections. I looked up the word drift. What? I know he explains and breaks it down, but where did that word come from? Oh, drifting is another word for procrastination. And procrastination is always destroyed by decision making. And whenever my mind becomes too programmed to listen to my intuition, adversity spins right back around to bring me back on my mission. Whew. Then it makes you change your environment, your respect for time. It creates harmony with your heart and mind. And it forms caution against those with negative energy. Damn. That's real, bro. A process that 98% of the people in the world would never know about. And the 2% of us who do experience that have to sit back and watch the other 1% struggle to stay consistent with this process. No wonder why you feel lost, lonely, and confused. But it's crazy because they still act surprised when you make the impossible possible again. Everybody thought I was losing it, bro. Being gone for 2 years made them think I was defeated. First, I walked away from everything I built in LA. Then I didn't fight back when TikTok banned my account with 300,000 followers. After that, I completely stopped making content. Then I canceled my book tour and decided not to do no press or promo for it. And then I sold all my luxury cars in that $1 million house I had. But to keep it real with you, when I did these things and I was letting go and I was falling back, that's when I started to feel all my hunger return. All those people thought I was losing it, but in reality, I decided to break out of that web of negative consciousness. And this is why you got to be careful on who you tell your plans to. You got to understand that 98% of the people around you won't understand you because they're stuck in a negative consciousness. When you start making your plans to break out of this negative consciousness and you start noticing the things around you that you're watching, you're hearing, and you start feeling a little skeptical about it and you know something's off, but people think you're crazy. I got a quote for that too. Crazy people make me feel crazy. You got to be careful telling people what you're going to do. Because as soon as you start saying those things out loud, I'm telling you, bro, that propaganda is going to come right back at you. Most of the people you're telling your biggest fears to never broke out. So you can tell your plans to the world all you want, but first, show them. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first, show them. Now, let me show you how to do it. Because I waited a long time to say this. I avoided things like reading, writing, and being present my entire life. I always blamed it on my learning disabilities and my ADHD. But the disorganization from always jumping from one milestone to the next without stopping for a moment to appreciate any of my success never allowed me to be present with my friends or my family members. I was constantly stressing about getting more clients and making more content, just lying to myself, caught up in the hype of growth. Just to notice, I never escaped survivor's mode. That's when I started thinking about those thoughts and feelings my intuition was trying to tell me this whole time when I was in LA. And that's when I started having these scary thoughts. Well, these thoughts that were scary to everybody else. And they was only scary to me because I was saying it to other people and they were like, yo, you're bugging, you're tripping. But the thought that I had when everything was going down, when everybody was dying on me, when I was trying to find my way to feel something again. My grandfather died, my stepfather died, my cousin died, all died in the same week. I was too scared to leave LA. So instead of going to these funerals, I was sending the money to pay for them because I was too scared to lose the momentum that I was building. But I couldn't get rid of that negative guilt that I was holding. Keep it real with you. And that feeling of not feeling anything and being numb was weird to me. I went through adversity my whole life, but I always went through adversity broke. I had a little recognition. I had some money in my pocket, finally. And I learned that those things just helped me avoid the pain. And the more you avoid the pain to chase pleasure, the more you create an internal battle with yourself. I didn't see it at first, and most of you are not going to see it. You're not going to see it the first time it comes around. Some of you going through it right now, you're not going to see it. I'm telling you. Somebody's saying it to you, though. Somebody who's close to you is telling you. You're not going to see it. So instead of me buying a flight to Jersey from LA to go be present at these funerals, I spent that money on buying a brand new Mercedes. After a few weeks, that didn't numb the pain, so I brought me another car. Then I brought me another car. $250,000 gone in 2 months for buying cars. Then for some reason, I looked around my house and it wasn't big enough. I don't know where that came from. It was a feeling that I had that was not a true feeling. My intuition was the ego. I was trying to feel something, so I bought a bigger house. When they shot my best friend and killed my best friend, I chased more followers. When my other best friend died, I didn't go to his funeral either. And then one day I thought to myself, what happens if I choose to really lose it all? What happens if I pull the trigger on all my fears? What would happen if I choose to face all of my weaknesses? And the more I thought about that, my heart was just pounding. Pop, 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 pop. And then one day I said, you know what? I ain't building none of this for being who I am at this moment of running away from my pain. I built this because I faced all my pain and I overcame everything. But I was only able to really achieve all the things I was able to achieve because I was running as fast as I can from fear. Fear was a drug for me. And then when I achieved all my things, I ran into the trap. I ran into the trap, bro. The trap of finally getting all the things you always wanted, and now being too scared to let it go. And that warrior in me, who I knew my whole life that was able to overcome anything that came their way, I knew I was avoiding that version of me. But then I knew that you can cheat man, but you can't cheat God. And I started noticing I was being triggered by all the celebrity clients I was training. All those people that were very successful out in LA. I saw how they were faking their life behind the camera. And then as soon as I got on the camera, they acted like a totally different person. And I knew who they really were. And I knew all their problems I was coaching them through came down to the fact that they weren't facing their biggest fears. And then I came back to think about a quote that my high school teacher, Mr. Page, said to me. He said, Nate, you got to be careful on what you hate because you might just become it. Oof. The day that I recognized that, I remember it like it was yesterday, bro. I was scared, bro. I was heartbroken. I went through grief. But I'm not going to lie to you, bro. The thing I feared the most was being like them. The thing I feared the most was losing the only asset that I really have, and that's just being authentic, raw, real. And I swear to God, I made the decision to let it all go because I visioned this moment of being back with you. Being back with you and like, yo, look, I told you about my childhood. I told you about everything I went through as a kid, all being homeless, all this stuff, all this pain. And I know it's relatable and to a lot of you, and I know it can inspire a lot of you, but it was as if the universe wanted me to go through something else to come back and share it with you. And that's from my heart, bro. I really mean that. And I really believe that. So I'm going to start this life thing all over again. I'm going to disappear, then pop right back out to show you how to do it. And I didn't care how much time it took. I made the decision that I was going to be present and I was going to master being present. I didn't care how many times I failed. I was determined to get my book traditionally published. I knew losing my TikTok account and all the podcast episodes happened for a reason. I knew how to get back to my roots, go back to the ghetto to face all my pain I was running from. I also knew better than beating the bricks off that man that put my mother in a coma. I knew it was a trap. So I fell back and let karma handle him. I knew all the little games that the devil likes to play. But what I didn't know was that I was struggling with the fear of death subconsciously. And that's when that Carl Jung quote hit me. Negative energy only got to me after seeing my 3 closest friends die on me. And when that happened, the devil really thought he had a victory. He thought he had a victory after he planted the fear of death in me. But I'm wise enough to know that everything in life has a polarity. You see, the devil bragged about how he plants negative energy with the seeds of fear and greed and revenge. But God created those same seeds from faith, love, and courage. And I know it's easier to fall for the negative things, with the devil always chasing you, making you believe that change is impossible. But I'm also wise enough to know that God is waiting for you to realize it's really you that makes the impossible possible. With no promo, with no book tour, my book, The You Never Knew, went #1 on the bestsellers list. And not just the physical copy, the audiobook did too. Then, Lin-Manuel Miranda, the same man who created the Broadway show Hamilton, the same man who wrote the songs to some of your children's or nephews or little cousins, little sisters' favorite songs in their Disney movies, like Encanto, hired me as his full-time coach. Lin-Manuel Miranda is not only my client, but he's a real close friend of mine today. And then after that, WWE superstar Raquel Rodriguez hired me as her coach. She was battling an autoimmune disease called mast cell syndrome, something that kept her out of wrestling for 10 months. Well, I figured out exactly what was causing it, and she hasn't missed a day of wrestling since. Now think about this. I did all of this while being off the internet. I did all this while not being in LA. And I did all this while I was losing everything. So there goes your proof that it's possible to flip the hypnotic rhythm from negative consciousness to the positive. Bars. Now, if you want to tap more into the book Outwitting the Devil, I put a link to a free version of the audiobook that I found on YouTube. The audiobook is fire. But I also left my book, The You Never Knew, down in the description for you as well. If you haven't gotten a copy, you can get that book on Amazon. You can listen to the audiobook, which is narrated by me on Audible, or you can go to any bookstore, your local bookstore, and get my book. It's a traditionally published book, so you should be able to get it anywhere that they sell books, okay? Keep both of these books in your back pocket whenever you feel like negative energy is trying to get a grip on you. Now, finally, I can say something I waited 2 years to say, bruh. Welcome back to Be Great with Nate. And remember, it's always a great day to be you, my friend. Peace.